Sometimes I read a news article that manages to communicate a tacit belief. Recently, I read an article that talked about rural Oregon, and the way that it talked about it provided a good example of something that I have noticed in the media before. This is one of my pet issues, so I hope I don't annoy people by talking about it too much. Once again, it involves Betsey Johnson, a woman who is running for governor of Oregon. While covering her campaign, Oregon Public Broadcasted noted that some attendees were wearing t-shirts with the Confederate flag. A few days later, while covering the story and Johnson's response to it, a local news station, KGW, the NBC affiliate in Portland, referred to it as taking place at one of her rallies in rural Oregon. And rather than talking about Betsey Johnson or the Confederate flag, I am going to talk about rural Oregon and why this phrase was used. Because the rally took place in St. Helens, Oregon, a town in Columbia County located about 28 miles north of downtown Portland. As I mentioned in my previous video, Betsey Johnson lives in Scappoose, a town in the same county that is within commuting distance of downtown Portland. St. Helens is a little further away. If you live in the central area of Portland, St. Helens might seem a long ways away, but compared to the size of Oregon, St. Helens is basically a suburb of Portland. You can commute between St. Helens and Portland without much trouble. St. Helens, with a little under 14,000 people, is also small compared to Portland, but compared to many areas in eastern Oregon, it is densely populated. St. Helens has more people than 8 Oregon counties and has more people than this 4-county area of eastern Oregon combined. An organization called the Rural Health Information Hub actually has a tool, appropriately called Am I Rural, that can produce a report on any community in the U.S. These reports give granularity to describing how rural a community is. And for St. Helens, these reports say that while the county is 43% rural, it also says that it is part of a metro area of at least 1 million people, and that 30% of the residents of the town commute into the Portland area. Some of these metrics might be inexact, but in general it makes sense. This is a community located within easy commuting distance of a large city, and there is a name for communities like that: suburbs. But here is the secret. The words urban, suburban, and rural are now used more for their connotation than their denotation. In the tacit code, rural means conservative and populist, suburban means affluent voters who are socially moderate, and urban residents usually means either minorities or socially liberal professionals. And while the situation is of course more complicated than that, the audience is meant to understand that Johnson's rural supporters are conservative populists, even if they are driving into Portland to work in an office every day. Because a community like St. Helens has aspects of being urban, suburban, and rural, 2 residents of the town with similar lifestyles might have different identities. The St. Helens urbanite drives to work in Portland in a Prius, and the St. Helens ruralite drives into work in Portland in an F-150. I believe that we should look beyond the coded language to look at the reality of life in these communities, and I also promise that I will try to stop talking about this subject, but I probably won't.